was he on about? That body mister, come figure it out with the Sonnet Sisters.
Neighbours Godspeed, welcome to Sonnet Sisters. My name is Anna and today I'm going to be doing a reading and analysis of Shakespeare's sonnet number 19. I have been doing translations into modern language on the previous sonnets, but I don't think that's entirely necessary on this sonnet because the message is so direct and straightforward, and the language isn't heightened and complex enough really to spend the time turning it into simpler language. Instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about tone, potential settings, interesting pairings of words, and the rhythm. But first, a reading. Devouring time, blunt thou the lion's paws, and make the earth devour her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaws, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Make glad and sorry seasons as thou fleet'st, and do whate'er thou wilt, swift-footed time, to the wide world and all her fading sweets. But I forbid thee one most heinous crime. Oh, carve not with thy hours my love's fair brow, nor draw no lines there with thine antique pen. Him in thy course untainted do allow, for beauty's pattern to succeeding men. Yet do thy worst, old time, despite thy wrong, my love shall in my verse ever live young. So you may have noticed in the reading that the rhythm is kind of all over the place. Partly that is my fault, because I haven't learnt this off by heart. Partly it's kind of messed up. Shakespeare has messed with the iambic pentameter. The stressed syllables will fall in slightly different places where it makes sense to stress a syllable and to stress a feeling or a vibe, a meaning. It kind of doesn't fall in line with the I am. This makes for quite an uncomfortable experience. It's not the sort of pretty, perfect, neat, tidy little poem that we have had before from Shakespeare. This kind of fits with the violent imagery that he's invoking here. There's a lot of disfigurement, destroying, taking away, crippling, disabling of predatory violent creatures as well. So it's inflicting violence on violent creatures. It's quite high imagery. In terms of interesting pairings, we do have a few. There's the word brood, which is placed next to blood. That brings in the image of violence against youth, violence against young creatures, violence against babies. Then we have the image of boiling the phoenix in her blood, which is really quite extreme and insidious and purposeful. We then have fleets and sweets placed next to each other in rhyme, which brings back this idea of the transience of beauty. Time and crime are placed next to each other. Now I wonder what this implies. Could it possibly be that what time does is a crime? Who knows? Antique pen and succeeding men is a nice little pairing. It suggests maybe that all succeeding men will suffer this grotesque disfiguring that this antique pen is doing. If you remember back to previous sonnets, the word antique did mean ancient, but it also could mean grotesque. Young and wrong are also placed near each other, which is a nice juxtaposition because it almost gives this idea of youth triumphing over the wrongs that have been done by time or that will be done. Perhaps not really, because they're not going to triumph, because the end of the poem is a sort of giving up and giving in. In terms of tone, this is quite a protesting, defensive, not quite protective, more defensive and defiant sonnet. It's not particularly pleasant. It's violent. It's angry. Yeah, it's got some fire behind it. In terms of potential settings for performance of this sonnet, I have a couple of things in mind and we'll see what I do with that on Saturday, so tune in then. One idea is somebody giving a speech in court after their partner has been sentenced to life in prison, which I think evokes this sense of futility at not being able to control how time will take your loved one away from you eventually. Time being cruel and not having enough time with your loved one. If somebody was to go away to prison, your partner would only see you aging more quickly, I guess, if they're seeing you less often. The other setting that intrigues me a little bit is the idea of a parent whose child is being taken away by time, who comes and knocks at the door, which is perhaps a little bit more fantastical, if not, potentially relatable. I think both these scenarios could be quite painfully realistic. Ultimately, these are going to be a speech of protest which ends in ultimate, not acceptance, but giving in. So the general message of this poem is, do what you want, time, do what you will, just leave my love alone. You can touch anything else on the planet, just not my love. And then at the end of the poem, in the final couplet, we have this acceptance that, well, I guess time is taking my love as well, but you know what, time, they're gonna live on anyway, in my words. So kind of acceptance, kind of denial, kind of defiant finger up to time. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on Sonnet 19. Thank you for watching, and if you're interested in seeing this sonnet in performance, please do tune in on Saturday. Until then, rest ye merry. Ooh.